This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin. Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. I don't think I'd have to go a long way to find a person that would agree with me that liars can be the bane of your existence, in the lives that we lead every day. They mess up plans. They create deceit. They create disharmony. And it's a problem. But just think about you're missing a 20-month-old child. And I mean everyone under God's good heaven is out there shaking the bushes and looking for him. All the while, you might know something different. I think it was Winston Churchill that actually said a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. And it's amazing the power of words. But how much more so when it comes down to the death of a precious little one. Today we're going to talk about the death of little Quinton Simon from Savannah, Georgia. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Here we go again, Dave. How many times we're going to go around this over and over and over again with these pronouncements, seemingly, where people will go before a bank of microphones and sit there and say that, it ain't me. And it turns out the authorities think it is you.
Right.
and again, I got to just let me lay this out here real quick. Not really a disclaimer. It's just a reality check. This case is currently going to trial at this point in time as we speak. But I felt like it was something that we should chat about, the death of little Quinton, because it's been in the news now. I guess, this first kicked off back in 2022. Here we are in 2024. And I don't know that we'll have any more answers, but we'll see what the courts have to say about it, Dave.
From the 911 call where Leilani Simon, the mother of Quinton Simon, is actually not making the phone call herself, although she can be heard clearly in the background of the 911 call. The call is made by Daniel Youngkin. Daniel Youngkin is the father of one of her children. He is not the father of Quinton Simon. But he makes the call, and the story is, we woke up, the front door was ajar, and the baby's gone. Not baby. The 1-year-old is gone, is what Leilani was saying. My 1-year-old is gone because she has another baby that's younger. There are 3 children in the home. One of them's gone. Now, to be crystal clear here, Joe, the beginning of the search for Quinton Simon was not that dissimilar from Haley Cummings, if you remember that story. Haley Cummings was a little girl who went missing in the middle of the night. The story is, I woke up, she was gone, the door was open. Having heard this a couple of times from people, you get really frustrated because the people who should care the most, the mom and the dad, the people in charge of these children, lie. They won't tell the truth. And I'm going to be honest with you, Joe, from the minute somebody tells a lie, don't you disregard as a researcher, as somebody looking into the disappearance? Don't investigators immediately say, why are you lying?
Well, let me pause you right there. There was an old investigator that I knew many years back. He's long since passed on. And he had been a long-time homicide detective before he became an investigator with the medical examiner's office. And we were chatting one night, and I'd asked him about deception. And, because he's literally a detective that went back to the 50s. So their worldview from back then was completely different. But he did have a nugget of wisdom, though. He said that within every lie, there's a grain of truth.
Oh.
And it's up to you as the investigator to find that little stitch in there that you can begin to pull on and try to unravel it, unravel it or untwine it, I guess. I don't know. That's probably the wrong phraseology, but unwind, I think is what I meant to say. Unwind all of that layering of mistruths that, contain that little kernel of truth in there. And, you begin to think about it in the statements. And so those things that they're fleeing, I think that what he meant is logically those things that a suspect might be fleeing from, you want to try to figure out what it is they're fleeing from and find out what the true reality is here. And one of the things that struck me about this case is that I found it very interesting that the first place her mind ran to, Leilani, the mother, was that someone had come into the house and taken him.
Right.
Okay. Well, you mean they had physically come into the house and taken your child? If that's the case, why is your house unsecured? If you've got these, obviously, look, dude, I could have hordes of gold around me. That is not going to, that on balance, that is not going to outweigh the value that I place on my babies.
Interesting how you look at things like a human being, and the people that we deal with a lot of times don't.
They just, it's so easy, I think, for many of them to dismiss it and to dismiss it very quickly. Now the ghosts are going to come calling in the middle of the night and drive you to madness, I think, if you're involved in something like this, involving a child, but just kind of the superficial on that surface of it. You sit there and you look at it and say, why are you doing this? Why aren't you helping us? Why aren't you truly helping us? Instead of running off to Tybee Island, which is just south of Savannah, and bending an elbow with mama down there at a bar. And I think that's what really got these people in a twist, the surrounding community, at least.
From the beginning, the press conference that began with the police chief, Jeff Hadley.
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh,
he says,
boy, was he something?
He says, a mother, this is from the press conference. I'm going to give you the direct word here. A mother called 911 advising that when she woke up in the morning, her 20-month-old baby boy, Quinton, now he said Quinton Smalls. I don't know why that is. It could have been just wrong name. Anyway, Quinton Simon was missing from his pack and play. Quinton was last seen wearing a Sesame Street light blue T-shirt, black shorts, black bottoms. So we got here as quickly as we can to assess the situation, trying to determine the nature of why Quinton was missing. Now, you mentioned that they said the front door was ajar, and that's step one, because did Quinton get out of bed, open the door, and leave in the middle of the night? Or did somebody come into the house and snatch her? There's 3 children to choose from. One is younger than Quinton. The other is older. And since it's the middle of the night, if a stranger danger came into the house, they would have to know, A, which child they were looking for, B, where that child is located in a darkened house. You're not going to come in and turn the lights on. And so the story changed, Joe.
Yeah, it could. Wow, I'm going to give you a detective badge pretty soon. I can see it coming on the horizon. Yeah, because, that's one of the most glaring things. Because if you're going to go in and literally, let's just think about this from a perspective of thievery.
Okay.
All right. Where someone burgles a home and they spend a lot of time that are really good. I mean, these are, like professional burglars. One of the things they're going to do is observe the location. They're going to know how many people are in there. They're going to try to get an approximation of where everybody is. And then obviously what is of value in that location. And can they go into this environment where they're not going to be detected? Well, if you're a perpetrator, one of the worst things you can do is go into an occupied location. You think about, because if what's being put out there is that these were just thieves that came into the house to steal something. They didn't find anything to steal other than Quinton. So you have to be purposed here. And you're talking about in the dark, Dave. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't know about you. I can't get up out of my own bed in the middle of the night without running into a wall or stumping my toe on something that's immediately adjacent. And dude, I live here. Just think about this just for a moment, being able to navigate through this environment, door secure or unsecured. You're navigating through this environment in the darkness because you don't want to draw attention to yourself, and you're going to go in and snatch a child. What guarantee do you have the child's not going to cry out? And how do you know that? And if the child's in a pack and play, is that pack and play in the same location every single night, or does mama move it around? Or, there's so many questions that you have to answer relative to this. And also one other thing is, if you're going to, this is something that I have kind of an awareness of. My youngest grandchild, they come over and spend the night at, we call it, my wife is Gammy and I'm Papa. They come over and spend the weekend with us. All right. Well, we had a pack and play for the longest time set up for our youngest, and she would be in the bedroom with us. We knew exactly where it was. But the thing about pack and play is not only is it positioned so that it can be moved, it's created that way, and it's light and portable and all that. But man, you have to really stoop over in order to get into this thing. And then you have to fumble around. It's not like sticking your hands over into a crib where anatomically the child that's in there is kind of oriented, toe to toe. This thing's perfectly square. They can be twisted in any number, and there's toys in there and blankets and everything else. And you have to know where it is. And then you have to stoop way over in order to, extract any child or any object that's in there. So it's the dynamic that they're trying to present here, that the mama is letting on with. I'm not buying it. As an investigator, I'm not buying it, Dave.
Do they, being investigators, because of the amount of time you have spent with investigators one-on-one and the times that you have in the last 20 years talking about these things, do investigators immediately talk about things like this? And when they're amongst themselves, I noticed X, I noticed this is what the claim is, I'm not believing it. Do you guys talk about that? Or is this something you make a note of and come back to later?
We would make a note of it. And we used to informally call it the Denny's Club. I'm not giving a plug for Denny's here, but we called it the Denny's Club in New Orleans because anytime we would work a case, there was an old Denny's restaurant that would they loved to have the police there because it was in a really rough area.
Right.
And we had a huge table in the back where we could still see the front door, and we would all gather around.
Wow.
That myself, the detectives, and also even the crime scene tech, if they had the ability. And we would do, kind of like a skull session afterwards. That's when we would, because you can come into that space and kind of compare notes, right, and, kind of what you're hearing. They would ask me about what I was seeing relative to the body or the remains. And you sit there and you're not going to make comment about it at the scene to another investigator unless it's something that is so urgent and so acute that has to be taken care of at that moment in time. And you develop a language where you kind of bounce off of one another and you begin to read each other. It's a weird thing. But, listen, everybody that hears us right now, it's not that we're special because people in just everyday life, the folks you work with, you develop a language all of your own, and investigations is no different. But the big trick is if you've got a liar among you and they're not set apart and they're within earshot, you don't want to reveal what's in your hand, because guess what? If they've lied once, they'll lie again and again and again.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin.
Redefining this sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Dave, I got to tell you a quick story. Many years ago, when I was still an ME investigator, my daughter came to me and said that she wanted to help me with my investigations. And I told her, I said, well, baby, this is grown-up stuff. You can't, I'm not going to expose, I'm just saying this to you, I'm not going to expose my child to this, because they get exposed one way or another. They hear you, they hear conversations and they see that what toll it takes on you. But I'd just gone to a conference, and this is during the days of when we were still trying to perfect our techniques in doing death investigation with children, because it is a skill set that is unique. There's so much stuff that you have to look for. And the conference that I went to talked about using baby dolls, and these would be representative at scenes where you would bring a baby doll to the scene. You'd ask the parent, the caretaker, to demonstrate with the baby doll what had happened to the child. Where were they? What was their position? And, it was a few days later after my daughter had asked that question, I said, hey, you still want to help me with investigations? And she's like, yeah. I was like, do you have a baby doll that you don't use, or that you would like Dad to have, that I could maybe use in my investigations? Oh yeah. And she goes in and collects this baby doll. And I had the baby doll sitting on my desk for a long time, and called her Clementine. And she sat there on my desk. And if I knew that I was going out on a child death, I would take the baby doll, place it in my scene bag. And the way you utilize it is you have the mother, you say, okay, this is the position the baby was found in. Obviously the baby's not here. The baby's been removed to the hospital. Or you go back and do a retro scene. I have a baby doll here. Will you take this baby doll and place the baby in the crib just like you say she was, or just like he was? And then we'd snap photographs, and the mother would be pointing to different locations, because if you're not there to bear witness to what's going on relative to these horrible cases involving children, you want to try to get as much first-hand knowledge as you can. Most of the time, the parent is going to be the person that is eyes on first, Dave. They're the caretaker. I mean, that's what you're expecting. It's expected out of you. It's been expected out of me and everybody else that should be proud enough to call themselves a parent. Mm-hmm. There's a certain standard, that you're held to. And so with that said, I'm wondering, when the police got there and they began to snoop around, observe. I hate the word snoop, but I just said it.
Yeah, but it kind of fits, Joe.
It does. It does. And what could they be looking for in that environment?
Now, let me ask you something very quickly about that. When police come into a situation like this, they're called into it. The family has invited them into the home. I have a missing child and I need your help. Do police have to be careful of what they're looking for? I know this is not that you're not a lawyer, but you've been around it your entire adult life. But do police have to be careful with what they're seeing and doing inside that home without a search warrant.
No. Because at that point in time, the underpinning for this, and particularly as it applies, and this is really this is a Nancy question.
Right.
Nobody tell her I made a comment about this. Okay. So I don't want to get.
That's why I said I'm not asking you. I'm just because you've been there. You know.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you from an investigative standpoint. If the court is going to look at this as an emergent situation, like we're trying to find a child.
Right.
All right. So if you go looking in what they refer to as hidden places that the court considers reasonable, like if you got a missing child, I'm going to look under your bed.
And they did.
Okay. Yeah. And I might open a closet. I'm going to look in the cabinets,
Right.
the cabinets in the kitchen, see if the child crawled in there, you know. I'm going to look everywhere that might be a hidden where a child could fit in. Now, am I going to go to, and this is a case that goes back years and years ago, and you guys can look it up for yourself, but it's called the Dolly Map case, very infamous case where it dealt with looking in hidden places. I'm not going to go into somebody's desk drawer and flip this thing open and look at it, you know, and see what kind of files they have in there. That's not the purpose of what we're doing. We're trying to find a child.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay.
So to your point, no, this is an emergency situation. You have to take a really close look because right now the goal is to try to find Quinton and try to find him intact, alive, and to reunite him with his family.
Okay. Now, in this case, the first thing that is said on the 911 call is, we woke up, Quinton's not here, front door ajar. Now, as police begin investigating and they talk to Leilani, I want to lay out a couple of things that Leilani told them.
Okay.
They knew, they being police, because they're going to immediately pull up who the adults in the building are. They want to know what's their background, and you know. Yeah,
they're going to run them. They're going to run them. They're going to find out who's occupying that space. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to step on you.
No, I'm glad you pointed it out because there have been a lot of things happening in the life of Leilani Simon and her children in the weeks leading up to October 5th. Now, in particular, Leilani Simon lost custody of her children to her mother, Billie Jo Howell. Billie Jo Howell, Leilani's mother, has custody of Leilani's children and is supposed to be there with them. She's not. Billie Jo Howell is not at the home when the children when Simon goes missing. I'm only pointing that out because she comes into play very quickly here, Billie Jo Howell. But Leilani Simon tells police fairly quickly, I think Quinton Simon is with his dad, his biological father. He must have come and got Quinton because police are asking her, okay, so like we talked about a minute ago, somebody came here in the middle of the night in the dark, didn't wake anybody up and grabbed Quinton and left, or Quinton got up and opened the door and left. Quinton Simon, by the way, according to his grandfather, couldn't open a door.
He's 20 months old. It doesn't surprise me.
Can't open the door.
I don't know that he could have Well, first off, I don't know that he could have sufficiently reached the doorknob.
Right.
And secondly, even if he did he have the arm strength and the hand strength in order to rotate the knob?
After climbing out of the pack and play.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Or to actuate the little switch on I don't know how the lock is set up, but no, I understand what you're saying. And you're right. And listen, the granddad would have had firsthand knowledge. Right. He's looking at this thing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You can only imagine. I think early on, and this happens with cases involving children, we always say, we're holding out hope. We hope that they're okay, these sorts of things. But let's face it, Dave, the younger the child is, the higher the probability is that they will not have survived on their own, without their protector around them, because 20 months old, child's in a diaper, 20 months old, the child needs someone to feed them. 20 months old, they need to be bathed and taken care of. 20 months old, they need to be put down to sleep. And in my experience with my kids, I know that when they would be put down to sleep, there were certain items they had to have with them that brought them comfort, in their little space that they lived in. And for investigators, when they begin to go back to the home and search through the home, I can tell you, Dave, without any hesitation, they're looking for things that would indicate to them that this is something far more than merely a missing child case. They're going to be early on, I think, looking for things like blood. They're going to look for objects that might have blood on it. And certainly that pack and play, they would have gone over that with a fine-tooth comb, looking around all of the edges of it, looking at anything that was contained in their blankets, pillows, if there was still anything in it. That's the big question. What was the status of this thing? Many times, if you have an individual that gets rid of, and this applies to adults as well. Say, for instance, somebody's killed in a bed. All right. Many times what will happen is that the perpetrator will just take all of the bedclothes, fold them around the body. Body is like, it's rolled up essentially and transported out of the house in that manner. This happens with children too. If they're killed in that spot, they'll wrap them in their little blankies. They'll wrap them, and I've had one case I know of where we found a stuffed animal that was wrapped up in blankets with the child. And I always thought about that case in particular because I was thinking, was this like some kind of sick thing that they wanted to have the stuffed animal with the child? Or is this just something that happened as a result of them, catching everything together and rolling it up, and that the stuffed animal wound up in there? And you never know what you're going to find. And so with that, from an evidentiary standpoint, everything contained in that living space for that child has value. And you are, in fact, as an investigator, hoping against hope that child has survived. But sometimes you just have to face reality and learn that you're no longer working a missing child case, but a homicide.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The purpose of a landfill is not only to dispose of garbage, it is used in order to render it down. If you ever go to a landfill, and many people have not, but if you ever see one, first off, they're vast, and there obviously is always a smell in the air. Even as hard as they might try to mask it under what they refer to as the dome, the way these things are set up.
Okay, Joe, you're going to have to explain that a little bit, because when you said, I've talked to you about this, that I didn't know about landfills and how they were broken down and how they actually have a map that details levels of where different things are, because until I watched that documentary about the E.T. game that killed one of the
the Atari game.
And that was
where they found those cartridges.
Right.
Yeah, it really is. And you don't really understand. I mean, and there's a reason that many people go into and study in college in environmental engineering. Well, part of that is dealing with refuse and understanding the biochemical properties of that location and certainly the items that are going to be going in there. And so you have aerobic and anaerobic environments, aerobic with oxygen, anaerobic diminished oxygen. And some people have stated that you can have an anaerobic environment where by virtue of the way the thing is set up, you deprive the area of oxygen, and they create this kind of dome that goes over it. It doesn't give off this foul smell, but everything is kind of breaking down. And they both have upsides and downsides to them. But the one thing that we have to keep in mind is any organic material that goes into a landfill is automatically, going to begin to decompose. And we've even talked about this before when we did our series on postmortem changes with human bodies. Our bodies start to break down at death. Okay. It's at a cellular level. You're not necessarily going to be able to appreciate it, but there are all these changes that are taking place. So if an organic item is placed within a landfill because everything else around that item is in fact decomposing, it promotes it. It promotes kind of the rapid onset of decomposition. Things break down. Understand these things are so massive that they have to have that kind of environment in order to continue to put things in there. And it's all stratified. So just a quick thumbnail refresher. If you have a landfill, it's literally broken up into, they'll call it grids, zones, areas, and they're enumerated. And they know precisely, first off, which zone is active at that point in time. They have it dated and cataloged, okay, because there are certain stipulations even put forward by the EPA as to how they have to manage these things. Well, once that area is filled for that period of time, they go on to the next zone. Here's the big key here, though, Dave, going back to the Azalea motorhome park. They're going to know where that little truck drove out to and picked up that dumpster and then dumped it into the back. And Dave, anything that was in that dumpster at that location, this should chill everybody down to their core. It was compacted on site. All of us have seen this happen. We've all witnessed garbage trucks coming by, these big behemoths, these big machines that grab our garbage, they put it in. And once they get to a certain level with garbage, there's a big iron metal door, thing that comes down with a hydraulic arm on it, and it compresses everything in there. So it's literally compressing it down so that they can go out and pick up more garbage. So during this period of time, during that run of that little truck going through the Azalea mobile home park, there would have been layering going on even in that truck, but they would have known which zone the truck would have gone to on that particular day and dumped. So
wow,
if they're suspecting that Quinton's remains are in that area, they at least have an indicator as to where they can begin to look.
Right. Now, let me ask you, Joe, because when investigators arrive on scene, missing or dead child, and you look around the area of the home where the child, I'm going to assume, was last, where the parents say the child last was, in this case, a pack and play or what have you. But our law enforcement, when they're looking at this, are they looking for items that might be found with this child, whether they're lost, kidnapped, murdered? As you mentioned how oftentimes a body will be picked up with all the things around it, blankets, whatever, that they just pick up this mass and throw it away or dispose of it. Are they making note of what they're seeing in that environment to know what's going on between the parents and the children or child? And then later on are they paying attention to looking for that doll, for that blanket, for that toy?
Yeah, they are. If they have been able to, well, we have to keep in mind, everybody that's out there, there's high probability, not everybody, but a goodly percentage of the people that are on that search team have their own kids. They know what their own kids have that are intimate objects that are they're not going to know anything about Quinton. And now, since you're surrounded by a group of people that aren't exactly being truthful, how much can you trust that base information that's coming in? I tell you, one of the key people here, I think, would probably be like a babysitter that would have knowledge. Because if they're circling the wagons, are they even going to tell you, well, this was Quinton's favorite toy. This is the color of his blanket. This is something, they gave the description on the pajamas, that kind of really stuck in my mind. They start talking about these Sesame Street pajamas, because our kids, I look back in time and I think Cookie Monster,
right?
You think about those things, Big Bird,
I did too. I pictured the purple,
and you think about that. So if they have that description, which most of the time they will, when you go out on a missing persons case, one of the first questions is, well, they're missing. What were they last seen wearing? Okay.
Right.
And with children, you don't have ID,
right?
So basically all you have are those descriptions. And if I'm asking as an investigator, where was he sleeping? And I go to the crib, the pack and play, and there's nothing in it, I'm going to say, did he sleep without a blanket? And automatically I'm thinking, okay, well, wherever he is, that damn blanket's with him, more than likely. But I'm not saying that's the case with Quinton, but that's the type of thing that you're looking for. And you have to be able to be sensitive to that. And that's hard to do in these environments because they're so emotionally charged. You've got somebody that's screaming in the background. They're going on, find my baby, find my baby. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to assess the situation. And you think, well, did this child sleep, on a bare mattress in this thing, or did they have a blanket? If it was a blanket, did they use more than one blanket? That sort of thing. And so when you go out to a landfill, which is like, I've often equated it to taking the biggest jigsaw puzzle in the world that you can think of with the tiniest pieces and essentially just kind of tossing it up into the air.
Right.
And let the pieces fall with it, because everything looks the same. You get out there and you really have to fine tune your senses, and you have to have a plan. This is not something, this area, Dave, is so vast that when you assemble a search team, because right now this is still a search, it's an evidentiary search. You're not searching for, because you don't expect to find a live child in a landfill. You're out there searching this area, and they were clued into this somehow, Dave. I don't know how at this point, but they're making the assumption this child is dead.
They actually are searching the landfill because of what Leilani Simon told them, Joe. From the 8th day of the investigation, when the chief of police says, we are not searching for a live child, we believe Quinton Simon is dead, and we believe his mother is the suspect, although no charges are filed. When you look back on it now, when they were building the timeline, they know they start with the morning of October the 5th when the 911 call is made where they say Quinton Simon is gone, right? Well, what happened the night before? Where were you the night of October the 4th? Leilani Simon tells police the night before, on October the 4th, she met her drug dealer to pay off a debt. But then she volunteers. Well, she also left again early the next morning to meet a friend to get a pain pill. Leilani Simon later tells police that she went to a dumpster the morning of October 5th at the Azalea Mobile Home Plaza. She claims she just dumped normal household garbage there. On October 31st, a slight change. Leilani Simon tells investigators that it was her boyfriend, not her. It was her boyfriend that left in the early morning hours of October the 5th. Then, October 21st, 3 weeks after that, Leilani Simon admits she had gone to the mobile home park that morning, not to meet a friend to get pain medication. Actually, she doesn't know why she was there. So, police zeroed in on the Azalea Mobile Home Plaza dumpster as the location because she kept pointing that way. And as you mentioned earlier, even in a lie, there will be a shred of truth. It was that dumpster that led the investigation to the landfill, and it was the investigation that discovered the body of Quinton Simon, or his remains, at the landfill.
The fact that they did find human remains and they were children's remains out there, first off, it's a miracle. All right, I'll go ahead and tell you right now, And I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but maybe that's why there was a celebratory mood, because I think that most people's perception is if you can get something to the landfill, nobody's going to have a chance of finding it. And Dave, you mentioned a minute ago, and I forgot I said this, about looking for a needle in the stack of needles. Right. That's what you're doing here, because not everything, but the majority of stuff out there is decomposing in this manner. And the fact that they found these remains, well, they were able to take the remains to Quantico, to the FBI lab, have them assessed. I'm pretty sure they probably had one of the top forensic anthropologists that they have access to on this, maybe a couple of them. What do we have? And they were able to narrow down an identification. I think they actually wound up achieving identification through DNA. And it turned out to be Quinton that they had. And since this case is going to trial, one of the things that is going to be really key here goes back to a comment that was made in regards to this case, and that is that Quinton died or was killed with an object. It's very nonspecific. When you hear these initial press releases, and we don't know what their findings are yet. So when you say killed with an object, that could mean the first thing you think of, killed with an object, is probably blunt force trauma. But the problem arises is, well, you're saying an object. Do you know what the object is? Was it a hammer? Was it a baseball bat? Was it a toaster? I have no idea. And the fact that what you're dealing with are skeletal remains, there's not going to be any kind of hemorrhagic pattern necessarily, or a braided pattern on the skin. I would imagine a goodly portion of soft tissue is gone, because I keep using the term skeletal in this. So is there some kind of pattern that you can find on the bone? I will tell you, at the age that Quinton was when he passed, 20 months old, the bones are still very soft and malleable. They're not, not really ossified like ours are. The older you get, they become firmer. So were they able to pick up on some kind of pattern? And my suspicion is it would have to have something to do with the skull. And you would still be able, I'll tell you how young he is, Dave. You would still be able to appreciate certainly the more anterior fontanelle, soft spot, and maybe even the posterior fontanelle that's back there by the occiput. That's how soft. It would not have completely closed up even to that point. You might say, if you touch your child's head, you say, yeah, the soft spot's gone. But at that age, at 20 months, it's still appreciable, particularly for people like a forensic anthropologist that know what they're looking for.
But Joe, you mentioned about how constantly crushing, constantly pushing down, constantly compacting it.
Right.
And yet now we have skeletal remains. What can be determined from the remains?
Well, here's the other thing. Here's the other problem they can run into here, Dave, is the determination between antemortem trauma and postmortem trauma. Think about everything this precious angel's body has been through. I mean, here it is. I'll give you the laundry list real quick. If this is a blunt force case, you've got that initial trauma. Okay. Then you've got the trauma of packaging his body and putting him into a vehicle. Now, we don't know what was done with the body in that period of time. That seems rather mild, perhaps. But then you drive to the dumpster. Was he merely thrown into the dumpster, or was he gently placed? Well, my suspicion is if you'll put your child into a rubbish bin, there's a high probability you're not exactly going to display the most respect for the human remains. Then you have the body inside the dumpster. Was anything else thrown on top of it? Okay. This is all in the postmortem state. Did somebody come by and throw their household trash in there? Did they throw I've gone to dumpsters where I've found whole sets of furniture, sticking out of there. I don't know. I don't know what else was in there. And then on top of that, you've now got the truck that's going to come by and pick up this angel's remains, and they're going to be placed into the back of this thing. Well, that's trauma too, because you got the contents of that dumpster rolling out and bouncing off of those metal surfaces and then landing in the back thing. And then the body is compacted. Okay. And we don't know how many other stops occurred that day for the truck. So you've got maybe multiple times that it's being compacted. You see how complex this gets? And then you go out to the landfill. Oh, well, we're not finished yet. Now the contents are going to be dumped out there. And we don't know if they were initially dumped in one location and then multiple bucket loaders came by and picked up that trash and deposited it. Maybe the truck didn't go directly out. I suspect it went to a central gathering area, scooped up, taken out there, and deposited. And then it's going to be they'll probably pat it down with a bucket truck. Okay. And then now you've got the machinery running back and forth and back and forth. This is so complex relative to how you determine antemortem and postmortem trauma here. And I think that this is a big area for probably the defense to feast in, if you will. They're going to talk about this. How exactly do you know that this didn't occur after the fact? And how do you know that he didn't just fall? You said object. How do you know that he didn't just fall and strike his head and mom panicked? I can almost guarantee you that's what's going to come up in this trial. So I'm left thinking here, all I can envision right now is those two in that bar in Tybee Island while all this is going on. And just do that with that backdrop, just thinking, if you will, sound of ice going into a glass, the sound of perhaps something being poured, people laughing, music playing in the background. And all the while, there's the hum of machinery as it slowly goes back and forth over little Quinton's body. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.